Every talent show gives us a handful of moments each season that people replay on their phones the next morning. Most of those moments fade within a week. But every so often, one of them belongs to a performer who has been working toward that exact 90 seconds for the better part of a decade, and almost none of that work made it to air. That's the case with Nene Royal, and once you understand where she actually came from, her audition stops looking like luck and starts looking like something closer to inevitable. The episode aired on America's Got Talent Season 21 in July 2026, filmed at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium in California, the same room where AGT has staged its auditions for years. A slight, visibly nervous 15-year-old walked out holding an electric guitar. She told the judges her name, said she'd flown in from Phuket, Thailand, and mentioned, almost as an aside, that she'd be turning 16 the very next day. The room sang happy birthday to her before she'd played a single note. She admitted, a little shyly, that her dream was to become a touring superstar. It was the kind of statement talent show contestants make all the time, and it's usually followed by something forgettable. It wasn't followed by something forgettable. The moment Nene Royal hit the first chord, the entire tone of the room changed. She launched into a reworked, heavier version of the Cranberries' 1994 hit, Zombie, guitar slide first, then a growl in her voice that didn't match the shy teenager who just introduced herself, then a wall of sound that had the crowd singing the chorus back at her within a minute. She played an Ibanez Musician Series guitar through a Fender Deluxe reverb amp, working in a burst of two-hand tapping partway through the solo, and by the time she finished, host Terry Crews was visibly losing it on the side of the stage. The judges' reactions told the story on their own. Sofia Vergara called the performance spectacular and told her she had a real shot at going far in the competition. Howie Mandel, not a man easily surprised after 2 decades in the industry, called her a rock star without qualification. Mel B praised her vocal control and told her the combination of voice and guitar work was, in her words, a match made in heaven. And Simon Cowell, who has spent his career being the hardest person in any room to impress, said her voice sounded genuinely authentic, and that the rough edges in the performance were exactly what made it work for him. For yes, unanimous, and she moved on to the next round. Within a day of airing, the clip had crossed 2 million views online. It's now sitting comfortably past that number, with reaction videos, vocal coach breakdowns, and clip compilations still multiplying across platforms. For most viewers watching for the first time, it looked like the classic AGT formula: unassuming kid, colossal surprise, viral moment. That framing isn't wrong. Exactly. It's just incomplete. Here's what the 4-minute audition edit didn't have time to show you. Nene Royal has been performing in public, in front of indifferent crowds, for years before she ever stepped onto an American stage. Long before Pasadena, she was a regular weekend fixture at the Naka Weekend Market in Phuket, an open-air night market packed with food stalls, motorbikes weaving through foot traffic, and tourists browsing racks of souvenirs who came for cheap t-shirts, not live music. That's where she set up, week after week, playing to a crowd that mostly wasn't listening. According to Guitar World, as of this year, she could still be found performing there most Saturdays, at least for the time being, before the rest of her career pulls her elsewhere. If you've never busked, it's hard to explain what that actually does to a performer. You give a song everything you have, and the overwhelming majority of the people walking past you never break stride. Maybe 1 in 50 pauses. Fewer than that actually stop moving. There's a specific kind of resilience that gets built in rooms, or, in this case, open-air markets, where nobody owes you their attention and most people simply don't give it. Performers who survive that environment tend to walk onto a television stage with a level of composure that has nothing to do with confidence lessons and everything to do with repetition under indifference. That's the piece of Nene Royal's story that a 4-minute broadcast segment simply can't carry. The girl the judges watched grow suddenly fearless mid-performance wasn't discovering a new gear. She was doing what she'd already been doing for years, just in front of people who were finally paying attention. She didn't only busk solo, either. Alongside her market sets, she performed rock and metal covers with local acts including Ozone Band and Mini Heart, putting her in front of live audiences in a genre that doesn't tend to go easy on inexperienced performers. By the time AGT scouts found her, she wasn't an undiscovered talent so much as a well-practiced one who simply hadn't yet been discovered by an American audience. There's no conservatory in this story, no famous mentor, no formal lesson plan. Royal picked up a guitar around age 7 and taught herself almost entirely by watching videos online, copying what she heard and saw until her hands caught up with her ear. That's a detail worth sitting with, because self-taught musicianship at a professional level usually means thousands of hours of repetition that nobody was there to witness or applaud. Just a kid, a guitar, and a screen, working through mistakes with no one grading the results. On stage, she told the judges she started at 7. Some of her own earlier online material has referenced starting even younger. Either way, the timeline isn't really the point. The point is that whatever technical control she showed in that audition, the tapping, the tonal range between a delicate melodic passage and an aggressive growl, was built without the scaffolding most young musicians rely on. No school music program handed her that. She built it in a bedroom, on her own schedule, with nothing but persistence and a stubborn refusal to stop. That persistence eventually caught the attention of the instrument industry itself. Royal became a featured artist with Enya Music, an actual guitar and instrument brand, while she was still a schoolgirl, the kind of endorsement plenty of working adult musicians spend years chasing without ever landing. Her online following reflects the same pattern of quiet, steady accumulation rather than overnight virality. Long before her AGT audition aired, viral clips of her covering Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit and System of a Down's Sugar and Chop Suey had already helped her build a following north of 3 million across platforms. That's not a number that appears overnight. It's the result of years of consistent output in a market, teenage guitar covers on social media, that is brutally saturated and unforgiving of anyone who isn't actually good. The narrative that spread fastest online after her audition aired was the unknown teenager comes out of nowhere version. It's a compelling story. It also understates what had already happened in Thailand well before she ever got on a plane to California. In October 2023, Royal placed second at the Overdrive Guitar Contest, a competition respected enough in the Thai music scene to carry its own informal nickname, the Guitar Battle. Runner-up finishes at contests like that don't happen by accident. They happen because judges who evaluate technical guitar playing for a living decided her playing belonged near the top of a serious field. 2 years later, in September 2025, she was named an outstanding player at the King Power Band competition, another marker of recognition from people evaluating live performance, not social media engagement. She had also already appeared on the well-known Thai television program Super 10, sharing a stage with established professional musicians at an age when most people are still working up the nerve to perform in front of their own extended family. Put together, that record means the version of Nene Royal who boarded a plane for the United States wasn't a first-timer hoping to get discovered. She was a musician with a documented competitive track record in her own country, walking into a bigger room than she'd stood in before, but not an unfamiliar kind of pressure. She'd already been evaluated by serious judges. She'd already been through the discomfort of being assessed and found wanting or worthy in front of an audience. AGT wasn't her first test. It was just the biggest one so far. That gap between how the story got told online and what had actually been happening in Thailand for years is common to a lot of overnight success stories in general, not just this one. Most viral moments are the visible tip of a much longer, quieter effort that nobody outside the performer's own community was tracking. Nene Royal's story is a particularly clean example of that pattern because the receipts happen to be well documented. Contest results, dates, and a television credit that predate her American debut by years. Here's the part of the story that gives the whole audition a different weight once you understand it. Zombie is not a song about heartbreak, or partying, or any of the usual subject matter that fuels a rock anthem. It's a protest song, and it was born out of real grief. Dolores O'Riordan wrote it for the Cranberries after the March 1993 Warrington bombing, an attack carried out by the Provisional IRA in the English town of Warrington. 2 children were killed in that bombing, 3-year-old Jonathan Ball and 12-year-old Tim Parry, and dozens more people were injured. O'Riordan, an Irish musician touring at the time, wrote Zombie in direct response to that violence. The song wasn't written to entertain, It was written as a refusal to accept that kind of bloodshed as normal, and as a rejection of the assumption, one she pushed back against publicly, that violence carried out in the name of Irish nationalism spoke for her or for ordinary Irish people. The lyrics reach back to the 1916 Easter Rising, framing decades of conflict as a wound that kept reopening while children paid the price. Released in 1994, Zombie spent 6 weeks at #1 on Billboard's Modern Rock Tracks chart and has gone on to become one of the most enduring protest anthems in modern rock, with well over 1 billion combined streams and views across platforms. It's become something close to a stadium anthem in its own right, famously adopted by Irish rugby crowds, who still sing it in full voice during major tournaments decades after its release. Set that history next to the scene at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, a smiling teenager, one day away from turning 16, delivering that exact song to a cheering entertainment show crowd, most of whom were almost certainly unaware they were watching a song written in grief over the deaths of 2 children. Whether Royal fully carried the song's specific historical weight into that performance or was drawn to it primarily for its raw musical power, there's something genuinely striking about a teenage performer from one side of the world channeling a decades-old protest written by another teenager's musical hero from the opposite side of the world. It's 2 very different young women, 30-plus years apart, connected by the same refusal to stay quiet. Zombie has an unusual habit of resurfacing at moments nobody predicted. When Dolores O'Riordan died unexpectedly in 2018, many assumed the song would settle into the status of a beloved classic, remembered fondly, gradually fading from active rotation. That's not what happened. Instead, it kept growing. It crossed the 1 billion mark in combined streams and views, a milestone very few rock songs from any era reach, let alone one 3 decades removed from its original release. It found a second life through covers, including a widely discussed version by the band Bad Wolves that introduced the song to a younger generation of listeners who'd never heard the 1994 original. Perhaps the most powerful response to the song's ongoing life came from Colin Parry, the father of Tim Parry, the 12-year-old killed in the Warrington bombing that inspired the song. Rather than viewing Zombie as trading on tragedy, Parry has described it as a majestic and honest piece of work, one that turns grief into remembrance rather than silence. Coming from a father who lived through that loss directly, that assessment carries a weight that few other endorsements of the song ever could. And then, in a coincidence that's almost too tidy to be real, Nene Royal's audition went viral at nearly the exact moment the Cranberries announced the first-ever official release of a previously unheard 1994 concert recording, Live at London Astoria 2, due out August 28, 2026. Featuring a live performance of Zombie among its highlights. 2 entirely separate stories, 30-plus years and thousands of miles apart, converging on the same song at the same cultural moment. A restored recording from the band that wrote it, and a 15-year-old from a Phuket night market reintroducing it to a global television audience that had mostly forgotten, or never known, where it came from. That's really the through line of Zombie as a song. It keeps finding new voices willing to carry it forward, and each of those voices becomes another link in a chain that stretches back to Dolores O'Riordan herself. Nene Royal is simply the newest link, whether or not she set out to be exactly that. It's also worth noting that the song's staying power isn't purely emotional. There's a structural reason it keeps working as an audition piece, a cover song, and a stadium chant all at once. The chorus is simple enough that a crowd can join in within seconds of hearing it, but the verses carry enough melodic and dynamic range that a performer with real ability has room to actually do something with it. That combination, instant accessibility paired with genuine technical and emotional depth, is rare, and it's part of why Zombie keeps getting chosen by artists looking to make a statement rather than simply fill 3 minutes of stage time. Royal wasn't picking a crowd pleaser for its familiarity alone. She was picking a song that rewards a performer willing to commit fully to it, and then she committed fully to it. There's a broader thread running underneath this story that's worth naming directly, because it applies to more people than just one teenage guitarist from Phuket. Royal spent years building something real in near-total obscurity, competing in contests most of the world never heard of, playing for crowds who mostly weren't listening, refining a skill set with no guarantee it would ever lead anywhere beyond another weekend at the same market. Then, in the space of a single televised performance, millions of strangers decided they'd discovered her. That gap between quiet, unglamorous effort and sudden, loud recognition is one a lot of people recognize from their own lives, even outside of music. You put in years of work nobody notices, and then one visible moment arrives and people act as though the work started the day they found out about it. Royal handled that particular collision with more composure than a lot of adults manage, largely by letting the performance itself do the talking rather than trying to correct the narrative in interviews. The result is that her story is now catching up to what was already true about her, rather than the other way around. The audition was the beginning of the story, not the end of it, and Royal appears to be treating it exactly that way. Her 4 yes sent her through to the next round of season 21, and as of now, the show hasn't revealed how far she'll ultimately advance. She remains in the competition, one step closer to the touring career she described to the judges. Away from the show itself, she's reportedly been writing and recording original material, with a debut EP described on her own official channels as the next stage of her artistic development, expected sometime this year. That matters, because it marks the shift every cover artist eventually has to make if they want a lasting career. From performing other people's songs however well, to putting original work into the world and finding out whether an audience will follow her there too. Line the whole arc up and it's a genuinely striking one. A child who picked up a guitar at 7 and taught herself by ear, watching videos with no formal instruction. A teenager who spent years playing to indifferent night market crowds in Phuket, competing in Thai guitar contests most of the world never heard about, building a following of millions before an American audience knew her name. And then a 15-year-old who, one day before turning 16, chose one of rock's heaviest protest songs to introduce herself to the world, with her father quietly watching from the wings, the way he'd probably watched her 1,000 times before in far smaller rooms. The trembling teenager the judges met and the commanding performer who took over the second she started playing were never two separate people. They were the same person the whole time, and going by everything that led up to that one audition, it looks like the story is still only about halfway told. So here's the actual question worth sitting with. Does Nene Royal have what it takes to go all the way in this competition, or is her real breakout moment still somewhere further down the road? That's worth thinking about, and worth watching for, as her season continues. Sources consulted for the script include reporting from Billboard, Guitar World, Loudwire, Music Radar, Prime Timer, Music Times, and MEAWW, alongside publicly available information about the 1993 Warrington bombing and the history of the Cranberries' Zombie.